which is crazy.
Right.
I'd like to say thank you to everybody who showed up at Fisher Brewery for the SLCN Mayor Forum. I think it went well. I think most had a pretty good time, so thank you. We had a little bit of a change of agenda. We thought David Shear was coming, and then we also had Katie Williams, who is here to talk about the UTA TechLink study, but they're going to push their public launch, and maybe these other folks can chat about that. But I'm just going to turn the time over to, I think Megan Waters is here.
Hi. Yes. Hi, Landon. Thanks for having us. My name is Megan Waters. I'm the Community Engagement Director at UTA. TechLink will be back in the future. We just had, we're actually probably going to like rebrand the project, so it's a little bit more explanatory what it entails. But we'll be back in probably, hopefully your next meeting. But I'll get with Katie and make sure we are coordinated on that so you get a good update. We wanted to come and talk a little bit about our long-range transit plan. So our long-range transit plan has been in development for the past couple of, past that year, basically. We have finished up comments and we tried to get on your September agenda, but there wasn't room for us, but that's okay, because we're here now and we want to just tell you about the process. So Matt Gray is joining me from our strategic planning team. So he's going to give sort of the overview of what's gone into our long range transit plan, the purpose of it. We're not quite done with it, but we have a good foundation for it and should have a really good roadmap for future transit projects. This is a cycle that will be repeated every 4 years, so we can look forward to having fresh updates pretty often. So Matt has a presentation. Before we begin, is there any questions though? Okay, Matt, do you want to share your screen or do you want me to pull it up?
I will share mine.
Awesome.
Let's see. See, are you seeing? I'll go into present mode.
Yep.
But you're seeing
We
the
don't
slide?
see present mode. Yeah, yep. Think it's on your, we still see kind of like what's coming up next.
Oh, okay.
See the slide.
Okay. Well, I don't think that's a big problem. I don't know how to fix that, but it's not gonna. So yeah, as Megan said, this is it's a plan that will be updated on a 4-year cycle, but it is the very first one of our long-range transit plan. In the past, we've been a little more reactive to the needs and wants of other agencies and governments, and so this is our way of being more intentional about thinking 30 years ahead. And so let's get into it.
Hey, Matt.
Yes.
This is David. Quick question before you begin. Is this the same plan about which there is a link for an interactive map on the UT? Is this the same plan that has that interactive map?
Yeah. Yep. That should be the same one. So all the information about this, you see the URL down there, rideuta.com.
David, this is George. I was just wondering if you were back in town. I was at the Salt Lake Community Network.
I'm here in town, in person. Well, on Zoom, in person. Well, but the reason I asked that question is, and I've looked at the interactive map and I've played around with it a little bit. And a lot of the phases, I mean, there's 3 basic phases. I'm sure you're going to go into this, but a lot of them basically say assumed funding, assumed funding, assumed funding. So it looks like it's very tentative at best. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, and this slide you're looking at even says, right, considering all ideas not restricted by funding. So these are the things that we believe are needed in the next 30 years, but they're not necessarily funded. And so, but having things in this plan is helpful to getting things funded. So you're right, yeah. Just because something is in the plan does not mean it's funded. Um,
And
so,
if I can add to
oh
really
yeah,
quick, just for context, and you might have this on your next slide. You might have seen some other interactive maps as well. The Wasatch Front Regional Council has a regional transportation plan looking out about the same timeline. That's been an input into this plan. And so there's some phasing in that plan too. So there's a lot of going on with transportation, and we're trying to get aligned on the plans and really understand not necessarily exactly what's going to happen, but if we have the resources, what is a priority and how should we phase that in?
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question is, do you have a mission statement or an overall plan or policy that governs all of these various plans? Because my personal interest is getting people out of cars, reducing air pollution, reducing demand on parking space and the like, and getting people more into mass transit and pedestrian and bicycle modes. And I want to know principally how this plan moves in that direction.
That's a good question. I don't know if I have an exact answer to that, but we are working with the state level partners, WFRC, MAG, the NPOs, UDOT. There is a unified transportation plan that you might be familiar. I'll drop a link to that in the chat. And I hope that kind of addresses what you're getting at, that we do have this shared planning and shared transportation vision that we're working towards. So I'll include that in the chat for you all.
Thank you.
this slide goes over the process of this plan. Now we already have, we're already around this spend to where we've done our major outreach. I think we originally scheduled this meeting to be before our engagement period was over. And that includes the interactive map that you've seen, David, as well as public workshops. So this is coming out in the fall, but it's a living document. It will be updated every 4 years. And being the first one, you know, we played a little catch up in getting this one done. So I think we can be a little more ambitious in the next phases. I haven't been too involved with this plan, but this goes over the way that the vision was developed.
Yeah. And kind of like I mentioned, taking in those other inputs from local, regional, state level plans that can help inform what's already out there. What if Salt Lake City Transportation Master Plan, for example, being an input into the long range transit plan. This is just specific to transit and also inclusive of local bus routes.
Yes. Yeah. Pretty much the foundation for this plan was including what's in other plans and so that we're all aligned. And then what's not in the regional plans is, like Megan said, those local routes, because they're more of a regional focus. But a major emphasis on this plan is improving the frequent service network. That includes all rail modes plus buses that come at least every 15 minutes. So I think the biggest thing you'll see on the map that goes with this plan is how many of our services are being increased from 30-minute service to 15-minute service. And here are the 4 investment strategies of the plan. One is maintaining our system. That's very important. There's a lot of work going into replacing the rails and vehicles as well, keeping everything running. System enhancements, getting things working more smoothly, expanding our frequent service network, like I just mentioned. And then also, in addition to providing faster and more frequent service, we live in a growing state, and we are challenged with also, expanding our service geographically to have more coverage for those who need it. And within maintaining our system, a big part of this plan and our efforts in planning are upgrading our bus fleet to go green. We're gradually, electrifying our fleet. We can only do that so fast because, in order to have electric buses, we need electric bus facilities and chargers. But there is a slow but steady transition. And then we can talk about corridor preservation. There's places where we don't solidly have plans in place to construct expansions, such as to Brigham City on Front Runner. But it's important now to think about what corridors we need to preserve in order to expand. So this involves buying the land so that in the future we can expand places. And then workforce is a big thing. Like, a limiting factor for us is even more so than money is people. So getting people hired and getting more people operating our vehicles. Let's see. I think I've talked a little bit about most of these, but also looking into new technologies. We're in talks often with UDOT about signal priority for buses and trains. So a lot of our buses are being equipped with technology to communicate with the traffic signals to trigger a green light. And so you might be able to tell I haven't rehearsed these slides, but I'll just keep going at a high level. Yeah, again, expanding the frequent service network. That's frequent buses as well as rail growth areas. But yeah, this whole plan ties into our UTA strategic plan goals. This comes from our board, right? Our guiding goals are to move Utahns to a better quality of life, exceed the customer expectations, achieve organizational excellence. That involves cost effectiveness, building community support, and generating critical economic return. Oh yeah, there's other major planning efforts going on, including Point of the Mountain. That's led by the state of Utah, UDOT. So they are, in charge of planning that that project. But we are a partner. Little Cottonwood Canyon, aka the gondola. Again, that's a UDOT project, but being the transit agency that would connect to it, should it happen, we work closely with them. And then seasonal ski bus service is another concurrent effort. I wish I knew more about that. But Megan, do you want to go over engagement?
Sure, yeah, I'll just give a little bit of background on what we've done. I do want to add on those concurrent processes. That slide is really to show that those are projects you may not see reflected super well in the long range transit plan as it stands right now, just because they're sort of in the works. We don't know what's going to be the conclusion or the trajectory of those projects exactly just yet. So you'll probably see those pop up into the next iteration of the long range transit plan. Just
Hey, Megan, before you get off that topic,
sure, yeah.
The ski season is literally right around the corner. Some of the resorts are opening next month.
Yeah.
What is the plan for the seasonal bus service? Are you going to increase the number of buses going up Big and Little Cottonwood Canyons? And are you going to increase the frequency of those bus turns?
Thanks for your question on that. I actually have some information to share with you all. I thought that might be a topic of interest. So the answer is kind of multifold, I think. So in terms of like on its surface, are we increasing the service levels from last year? We are not able to increase the service levels from the 30-minute service that it kind of got reduced last year, as you probably well know. So we're not increasing per se from that. However, we're working really closely with Visit Salt Lake, Ski Utah, the ski resorts to provide additional transportation services, particularly for employees. In addition to that, we do have plans. This is really an operator constraint. These are some of the hardest routes to drive in America, probably, but our seasoned operators are really the ones we rely on to drive these routes. And as you know, we are having an operator workforce issue. And so getting those folks who have a couple years of experience driving a large vehicle in dangerous road conditions. So that's one of our constraints, but we do have we are providing all-day bus service at both Cottonwood Canyons. I'm reading from my bullet points so I don't mess it up. We also have a plan, and this is sort of an as needed backup buses when possible. So if we do see high loads during peak periods, holidays, weekends, especially if there's a large snowfall, we are planning, as resources allow, to have sort of a follow bus. So if you've been at a park and ride trying to catch a ski bus, sometimes the buses are already full if they've come from a previous stop. And so we're hopeful that if we can get that information back to our operations team, they can send out a follow bus. So it's not adding frequency per se, it's adding capacity, because we don't necessarily have the capacity always to guarantee an increased frequency, if that makes sense. So we're hoping to add in those backup buses. We're also looking at some ways to improve bus flow in and out of the resorts. I mentioned the employee transportation. And we're also, you probably noticed last year, I think it was in December, January timeframe, the Cottonwood Connect service was added. That's a partnership with Visit Salt Lake County. It's a supplemental transportation service for people who are trying to travel up to the resorts. And so that will also be available again this year.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I mean, from my personal perspective, and it's only that, if you want to reduce air pollution, get people to the resort, cut down on parking, cut down on traffic jams, you've got to increase bus service. And if you don't, you're not really solving the problem. And I understand every reason you can't do that, but there should be a priority to do it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think you'll see with these efforts that we are prioritizing it within our limitations. But we don't disagree with you. We think it's important. We serve the entire Wasatch Front as well, and so we want to make sure that we're not sacrificing service in some areas to sort of bolster this in a way that's unsustainable for us. And so we think some of these strategies will really help create those partnerships that do create more sustainable diversification of options and people responsible for providing those options. Judy, did you want to say something? I'm sorry.
No,
Oh, okay.
I'm just listening.
Okay, great. I thought I heard you. So back to our engagement strategies on the UTA, the long range transit plan. Sorry, the UTA Moves 2050 is its tagline, but it is our long range transit plan. Those are one and the same. So we have spent, as I mentioned, the past year working on the development of the plan. But in addition to this past year, there was some development happening around the plan during 2021 and 2022. Our planning team did a listening tour with almost all of the municipalities in our service area, not all, but almost all of the municipalities, to really understand what were their plans for the future, what were their land use plans, what did they know about their community's needs around transportation. And so there's a lot of qualitative and quantitative information and data shared from our communities and stakeholders through the listening session. That was sort of an initial input into the development of the long-range transit plan. In addition to that, during this engagement period around the long-range transit plan, David mentioned that interactive map that is linked through a story map as well through our website that explains the process, that inputs the priorities for the long-range transit plan. That is still available, rideuta.com/LRTP, if you're interested in diving a little bit deeper and revisiting the information Matt shared. We also, again, that interactive map, but we held a series of public outreach meetings in different cities across the Wasatch Front, from Brigham City down to Provo. We also had a big push on our communications outlets, as well as working with partners like you. We have a lot of city stakeholders that are invested in this and getting the word out to their communities as well. So that kind of, in a nutshell, is how we have tried to engage with communities around the long-range transit plan. I did mention this is going to happen on a 4-year cycle. So likely in about 2.5 to 3 years, you'll be hearing about this again as community members. I also want to make a plug too, and I don't have a visual for this, but we're trying to connect better our planning process. So our long-range transit plan is looking out, as you see, 2050, so about a 30-year outlook. We have several other planning efforts that you're probably familiar with. I think we've come and spoken with you all about the 5-year service plan. Our 5-year service plan is developed on a 2-year cycle. So we'll be doing outreach again for our 5-year service plan starting next year. The long-range transit plan really feeds into the 5-year service plan, a more short-term look on what are we going to put on the ground, what's going to change. And that 5-year service plan provides us a really good map and a forward-looking view on what we're going to put into place, what we're going to put on the ground in terms of transit service each change day. So you're probably familiar with the change day process. We're trying to make that a more proactive effort because we know it's disruptive. We know people get surprised, and so we don't want that to be the case. We know that makes for a bad customer experience. So we are really trying to connect those opportunities where you've heard of our long-range transit plan. This is how it's informing our 5-year service plan. 5-year service plan will tell you this is what we're going to see in the next 5 years in terms of transit service implementation. And then each August, when we change things up, it should be something that people are kind of aware of that's going to happen based on our plan. So that's kind of what I wanted to say about planning. Are there questions about our UTA Moves 2050 or anything else beyond that?
So I had one question, but I don't know how to. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, and can you talk about what, if anything, is included for transportation to the new state prison? You talked about Point of the Mountain and what's going on in the south part of the, but on the north side.
Dorothy, I cannot speak to that today, but I can get back to you with some information.
So my concern is that you can go to all the cities and nobody's going to talk about that because it's not seen as anybody's responsibility. But it's a really big deal for the people who work at the prison, people who visit the prison. It's and if we can spend $1 billion to build the facility, we need to have, they're having a really hard time hiring people. And I don't see how people can get out and actually visit anybody there. It's just so difficult to get to. So I'm sorry we didn't bring that point up in some of your other meetings, but I wanted to try to bring it up here.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. I don't know, Matt, if you have any thoughts on that right now, but we can do some asking around and get some information back to you if not.
Yeah, that is a great question, and I don't know. That would be better answered by someone in service planning, so we can ask somebody.
Well, and I mean, one of the things you're going to run into is that because the prison is in Salt Lake City, you know, people will say, well, that's a Salt Lake City issue. They should be advocating for this and da. And Salt Lake City will say, wait a minute, this is a state facility. You know, you guys, the state needs to be making this a priority. They need to be putting money into it. You know, they need to be, you know, and we didn't vex, you know, so, and the state does need to put money into it. And it's in their best interest because they have a really hard time finding people to work there.
Yeah,
I think that's a great point, Dorothy, and I think the same point applies to the inland port, which also, if it goes forward as planned, will involve a lot of transportation issues. My question, Megan and Matt, is there going to be an opportunity for additional public comment? You mentioned that there already was public input and input from a lot of the governmental stakeholders, but what about public input beyond what's already been given?
Beyond what's already, so we did have the interactive map out. We received over 1,500 comments on that from the public. At this point, the long range transit plan will, they're in the process of sort of analyzing those comments, looking to those regional transportation plans and making sure we have a good final product to roll out as our first iteration of the long range transit plan. Again, we do have those future opportunities through the 5-year service plan and then the future cycles of the long range transit plan. But on this version, we don't have plans for another public comment period. It will, however, be going to our board of trustees as well as our local advisory council. So those meetings are always open for public comment if there is interest in weighing in that way.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for all your questions. Does anyone else have any questions?
This is Esther. It's not so much a question. I'm just kind of curious that I'm echoing, David's thought and everyone else's thought on the prison. I think it's kind of bizarre that the transportation is an afterthought. In the process that, you know, in terms of not having adequate transport there for folks that are working, and the fact that we're having a discussion about it now is kind of bizarre to me.
And I don't want to be like the authority on it. There's probably been discussions. I just probably haven't been a part of them, so I can't relay the best information to you. But we're going to get back with some good resources because we don't know everything and try not to pretend to.
That's fair.
Megan, this is Jan Hemming. Thank you to you and your group to present this to us. And, you know, it's a tough issue and there are a lot of concerns around it. And you're on the hot seat a lot. One of the questions I think that the public is interested in, I know I am, what seems to be the barriers to get more staff and personnel to run the UTA bus systems and your other offerings? There seems to be some challenges there. I don't know if you can address that and just help us understand.
I will try my best, and Matt, please feel free to chime in. So some of the things that I know that have been challenging for us during COVID, we weren't hiring positions, right? Like we cut service and we didn't lay anybody off, but we weren't sort of prepping for service to come back online. And so have been working a little bit on a deficit model. Some of our, and we acknowledge like some of our systems that are in place here, we have a pretty high supervisor to employee ratio. So supervisors have a lot of employees. We also have some tough working conditions in terms of new operators are hired sort of as we call them on-board or extra board operators. So it's more of an on-call sort of situation. And in order to fix those things, we have to hire a lot more people. So a lot more than kind of the normal flow of hiring. So we are experiencing sort of that retention issue. It's a hard job. And we are trying, we have a multifaceted approach to kind of improve some of these things where we're looking at working conditions, we're looking at supervisor and employee support, hiring and recruitment. We're seeing pretty good progress in terms of hiring and recruitment. It's once they get here, we want to make sure that they stay. And we've done some good work to, I'm not sure how much this has been talked about, but in the past, we would hire an operator and they would maybe have to wait a couple of weeks. But at this point, we are able to hire them sort of immediately. So there's an opportunity for people to start immediately, start getting paid, get their CDL training once they're on staff, which is really cool. We have some other efforts as well. And no one thing I think is going to be the answer, but we do have some exciting opportunities. We're working on a new English as a second language program. So we do have some new operators coming to us through this program where they can get hired on and do an ESL program that is sort of geared towards learn and operate bus, but get them to a proficient spot, and then they can go right into operator training, which is exciting too in terms of workforce expansion. I don't think it's not gonna add like hundreds of people, especially not right away, but we are working and looking at those untapped potential markets for workforce support and capacity. So that doesn't exactly answer your question, and I can get some more information from our HR folks to understand to the whole picture of what all is happening to support operator hiring and retention.
Thank you. That was that was very appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, one other comment, since if no one else has one, and that is, you know, if you've never worked with the lost and found people, the staff, they are pretty amazing. That is a really, really, really hard job. I had no idea how difficult that job is. And the staff you have there are very impressive. And the systems the new location that you've put it, however, is better, I think, for UTA because it gives more, it's more centrally located, but it's harder for people to get to. So that's something that maybe what you might want to think about is having kind of the current location, which is easy for people to get to. People who have lost things can get to it much more easier. Maybe keeping that open on a appointment basis.
Thanks for saying that, Dorothy. And first, thank you for complimenting the staff. They do have hard jobs, and they do a really good job. And without getting into too much of the back end inner workings, we don't like the new location for Lost and Found either. We know that it isn't as convenient by any stretch of the imagination for customers. So we are working on that. We're hoping it's temporary. But the old spot, Salt Lake Central, I'm pointing behind me because it's right behind me, is a building that will be torn down. And so there was sort of that immediacy, I guess, to get them out. And so hopefully we'll find a better, more customer facing, convenient location soon.
Thanks, Megan and Dorothy. My question goes back to staffing. does the UTA have a program, or does it currently have a program, or would it consider a program working with the Utah Department of Corrections to train people who have been convicted of crimes, maybe nonviolent crimes, as part of the department's overall rehabilitation programs to get people back into productive life after having committed a crime and having been incarcerated. It's a huge potential workforce. And I just wondered if UTA had any programs to work with Department of Corrections on that.
I don't believe we have any current programs like that. However, I like that idea. And I see the nod to you in the chat there too. We have a lot of positions, right? Like if there are background restricted positions or, moving violations, that operator requirements are pretty strict in terms of not having moving violations and things like that. So it does become a barrier, but I think for a lot of our positions, that is something to consider. So I appreciate the suggestion. I am taking notes on your comments, all of you.
Any other questions for these guys?
I did want to mention one other thing, Landon, if that's okay. I know
please.
it's taken a lot of your time.
No.
I know the UTA on-demand service on the west side of Salt Lake City is in some of your areas. And I know it's had capacity issues, and we just wanted to update you on a small change that's happened with the service that maybe has gone unnoticed, but the app, so it's run through this app called the UTA On Demand app. It's separate from our transit app, unfortunately, right now. But in order to help address some of the demand and capacity issues on the West Side service, they have started this new feature in the app where if you are requesting a trip from point A to point B, and it's better for you to travel on fixed route transit, like a bus or TRAX train, it will not book an on-demand ride for you and instead help you understand how to use the other modes of transportation to complete your trip. And so that's helping to take some of the load off of the UTA on-demand system, which is great news. And it seems like it's working pretty well. I just wanted to provide a little update on that because we know that has been sort of a point of frustration for some community members, and hopefully it's helping expand to at least when I take transit, right, you're like, I'm taking the bus today, you have a mode in your mind, and sometimes switching can be sort of hard for us as humans to get out of our habit. And so I think it is helping people understand too that, oh, there's another better option for me, maybe that will be faster. I just haven't tried it yet because I really like using this system, but I think it is helping, and I hope that we'll see positive results from it for the community, because we know that it is an important area to serve with transit.
Any other questions for these guys? Awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming.
Thank
You're
you.
always welcome.
Thanks so much. I'll drop my email in the chat if anyone needs me, but I have Landon's contact information. So I know there's a couple of follow-up questions. I will do a little bit of research here and talk to some colleagues and get you some follow-up answers.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, Weston, you want a couple minutes?
Sure. Hey, everybody. I just thought I could give a quick update on homelessness services as the weather cools. Some of you may have gotten a bit of it from the mayor at the quarterly meeting, but all the HRCs are adding beds every night. This started Monday, so the plan started on Monday, so things have started to ramp up. HRCs have added beds, and over the next week, they will have added 175 beds. So that's among the 3 resource centers. And that's through April. St. Vinny's is fully open with 65 beds nightly already. And then the West Valley shelter should open as soon as November 1st, and that'll be about 170 beds that'll be open 24/7. The Sandy medically vulnerable population one that you may have seen in the news or heard about, that should be open as soon as November 1st. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts in all of this, but that's sort of the goal. And then the temporary shelter community downtown, the site should be ready next week. The delivery of the buildings could be there as soon as November 1st, and that's been sort of the target. The state is working on securing the provider, and that more information should be coming on that soon. So there's a lot of things in motion, a lot of things coming online real quick here, and that is exciting. It feels to me less chaotic and earlier than it has in the time I've been here. So this is a positive step forward.
Weston, do you see the question in the chat?
Yeah, let's see. Brandy, that's a great question about the from my understanding, the cities, I assume you're talking about the city's dashboard. That is way more complicated than you think it should be to sort of assess that. And what ends up happening is it becomes delayed, so that it's not the best resource to get up-to-date current information. So the best way to do that is to call that phone number, which you probably know better than I do. I'm looking it up. Sorry, my dogs are going to be barking at my neighbors. Let's see. The 990-9999 number is the number that you should call. Hold on, let me get my dogs. Just one sec. Okay.
This is real time.
That's fine. Yeah, the 990-9999 number, that's going to give you the most accurate, they're going to have the most accurate information of where the openings are. You probably know that the temporary shelter community is not, the intake for that is through the resource centers. So a sort of a live understanding of what's available there is going to be a little bit different. And that is only 50 people too as well.
Weston, what are the numbers, the flex numbers on King and Miller and the youth section?
The South Salt Lake one, the men's shelter, that one, I believe they can add 100 beds. And then that one's 75 beds. And then the other two that are in Salt Lake can do 50 beds. And I think that's where we get the 175 added capacity to. Am I doing my math right? I feel like I'm not doing my math right, but doing math on the fly is not my expertise. Those are the increased capacity that those shelters are. The youth one, I'm not sure. That one, I don't have the numbers for that. I can find out from Andrew.
Thank you.
Hey, Weston, this is David. My question is the city providing transportation to get people who are now unsheltered and living in Liberty Park, Sugar House, etc., places that are going to be more remote from the resource centers or from where the other 600 beds are going to be located? Is it providing transportation for those people?
I know that the VOA and PD will do some transportation for folks as they request it from the remote locations. There is a shuttle system that goes between all of these locations all day long. So once they get usually to like the St. Vinny's area is where I think a lot of folks gather, as we know, then they can get on anywhere and then be transported to any location that they need to go. But I understand your question to be, how do they get from their remote locations they might be? And I believe that can be requested through the VOA, and police officers will take people as well.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Weston?
I see Brandy asked, let's see, people are already chosen. You know what? I think so. I don't know that for sure, but I do know that they're really depending on a lot of the VOA caseworkers to sort of identify the people that would be best suited for the temporary shelter community. So I don't know what the status of that is, like if they've already figured that out, or if they're still working on it, but it's probably just, knowing sometimes the commitment level of folks and whether or not they want to go into the shelters of any kind. It's probably a bit in flux, and they'll solidify it as they go. And there'll probably be some change out over the course of the winter. And the overflow, the West Valley shelter is 24 hours, which is a
So
great
I'm-
addition from last year.
Yeah, I agree with that. With respect to that West Valley facility, however, the 50 pods, I think that's what you're referring to.
The 50 pods are in Salt Lake. Those are the 6th West, 300 South, and then the 100. Oh my gosh. Andrew's so good at this. He has all these numbers off the top of his head. I have to keep looking it up. The beds, the West Valley beds, the 170 beds in West Valley, those are an indoor facility. I think it's an old liquor store or distribution facility or something.
Okay, but my question is for I don't know what you're calling it, the small pods, the 50 pods. I keep forgetting the acronym you use. But has an operator been selected yet?
So they're the temporary shelter community, and I have the same problem, TSC. We struggled with that for a long time. That is, so the state is selecting. When I asked Andrew for an update on that, he said that there will be more info coming soon. I don't know if they have actually done the selection, but I know that is, I know that's one of the trickier components. All the other pieces are falling in place on time, but I think the state is working on that part. I don't think it's been selected. Otherwise, we would know now. Or they certainly haven't announced it publicly yet.
Weston, can you briefly just address the site there on Redwood Road and North Temple that was a temporary winter shelter last year?
Are you talking about the Ramada?
Yep.
I don't know much about it other than it's my understanding that's the one that the developer that was going to develop it into some supportive housing has backed out of that process. And so, but I think it's still a bit in flux. I think there's a chance that it could still happen. I think they've sold it or they're in the process of selling it to another developer or another entity, and potentially that person could continue to pursue the same project. But I think it is just a little bit up in the air at the moment.
But doesn't the city have, does the city have any influence on what's going to happen to that property and how it's going to be used?
I think, I think we offered money, which I think we're getting back right now from the previous person we agreed with. We're getting that money back. So through our influence of offering money to support a permanent supportive housing project or affordable housing project, we can influence it. Or if it changes land use, we would have to, of course, change the zoning in order to allow for that. But outside of that, I'm not sure what else we could do to make that happen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That wasn't bad, Weston. That hot seat wasn't too terrible.
Well, it's not every day that I choose to step into the homelessness conversation, but I will do it for all of you whenever you need it.
All right, thanks. So in November, we're looking at topics to maybe to talk about, I guess. Does anybody have anything that they would like to hear about? I mean, would it be a good month to have Andrew come in and talk about all of these resources? And is that something that would interest people?
I vote yes on that.
Okay. Weston, I can reach out to him or maybe you can today and see if he'd be available.
Yeah, for next month?
Yeah.
Yep, I'll ask him.
Okay. All right, guys. Does anybody else have anything pressing they want to talk about? We have a few minutes before we're done.
The only thing I would add is, and I don't want to prolong this, at some point, an update on the affordable housing initiatives, I think would be of interest to a lot of the members in this group.
Okay.
And Andrew might be able to cover a little bit of that, but you could have Tony Milner come in and talk from a higher level of affordable housing in the city.
Okay.
And Andrew kind of has his hand in the permanent supportive stuff, but when it goes to the more just the affordable housing stuff, then it's probably Tony.
Okay. Maybe we'll have both of them come in November and we can talk about it. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for coming. And we'll see you next month. Thanks.